1933, the moment Germany seemed to rise while secretly beginning to fall long before the first shots of the Second World War were ever fired. In 1933, Germany entered a new chapter filled with loud promises of greatness and revival, but beneath these words lay weaknesses that would quietly tighten around the nation like an invisible chain. Germany celebrated its new leadership, believing it would restore pride and power, yet deep inside the system was built on unstable foundations that would crack. Long before the tanks rolled across Europe, this moment in 1933 was the beginning of a war Germany had already lost without realizing it, because its leaders created a path guided by emotion rather than strategy and by dreams rather than reality. The decisions made in these early days planted seeds of inevitable defeat, and these seeds would grow into failures that shaped the destiny of the entire war. 1934, a year where internal cleansing weakened the very structure Germany needed to survive in. 1934, Germany eliminated its own political and military voices in the name of unity, but instead of creating a stable command, it created fear, confusion, and imbalance. Officers who could have warned about future disasters were gone, replaced by loyal but limited figures who operated not for national interest, but for political loyalty. This weakened chain of command meant that Germany was already building a military machine with leadership too afraid to challenge disastrous decisions. The war was lost long before it started, because Germany silenced the very people who could have saved it from the chaos to come. 1935, a year of rearmament that appeared impressive, but hid enormous strategic flaws. Germany began to rearm in 1935, and the world watched with concern, but inside Germany, its rapid expansion was built on unrealistic timelines, limited resources, and poor coordination. The new weapons looked modern, the new divisions marched with confidence, yet behind the scenes factories struggled. Officers lacked proper training, and supplies were already short. Germany was constructing an army designed for quick symbolic victories, not for long, sustained global conflict. This imbalance meant that when the real war came, Germany would face shortages of oil, rubber, food, machinery, spare parts, and manpower. Germany was preparing for the wrong war, and failure was already locked into the design of its forces. 1936, a year where risky gambling replaced long-term strategy. Germany moved into the Rhineland in 1936, and the world did nothing to stop it. This convinced German leaders that boldness always wins, and that the world would always be too afraid to resist. This single belief would become one of Germany's most fatal weaknesses, because it encouraged reckless overconfidence instead of cautious planning. Germany adopted the idea that surprise and aggression could solve every problem. This was a dangerous illusion, and illusions never win real wars. Germany was already losing because it was preparing for future decisions based on misread signals rather than objective reality. 1937, a year in which diplomacy slowly closed around Germany, leaving few paths for future survival. Germany believed it could manipulate Britain, France, and even the Soviet Union, but by 1937 the global political environment was shifting. Germany misread every major nation, believing they were weak, divided, or distracted, but the opposite was true. Every aggressive step Germany took convinced more nations that Germany was a threat that had to be stopped. Germany was building a circle of enemies around itself. Even before the war started, a nation that isolates itself from all sides is already defeated, because it leaves no room for negotiation, no room for retreat, and no room for long-term success. 1938, a year of triumphs that secretly poisoned Germany's future. Germany annexed Austria and later forced the Munich Agreement over Czechoslovakia. These seemed like brilliant strategic victories, but each gained territory, increased Germany's geographic vulnerabilities. Its borders expanded so rapidly that defending them became nearly impossible, and within these new lands came ethnic tensions, resistance movements, and logistical burdens. Germany celebrated expansion without preparing for its costs. Every kilometer of new land demanded soldiers, fuel, railways, food, and administration. Germany was stretching far beyond its limits long before the war began. Like a rope pulled too tight, Germany was setting itself up to snap under pressure. 1939, a year of no return, where Germany entered a war it could never truly win. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, it believed the war would be fast, easy, and controlled, but Germany failed to understand that once the war began, it would face enemies with far greater industrial power, greater manpower, and greater access to global resources. Germany expected a short conflict, but it entered a long war. Germany expected isolation between its enemies, but instead created unity among them. Germany expected to maintain control, but instead triggered a conflict that would overwhelm its capacity on every front. The war was lost at the moment Germany chose to fight on the terms of its enemies, not its own. The economic weakness that doomed Germany before the first tank moved. Germany never had the resources to fight the kind of war it was about to start. Its oil supplies were tiny, its food supply unreliable, its raw materials limited. Germany's industry could not match the vast factories of the United States, the Soviet Union, or the British Empire. The moment Germany committed to large-scale war, it guaranteed its own defeat because it did not possess the means to sustain war. Germany was not a superpower, but it acted like one, and this illusion of power was one of the biggest reasons the war was lost before it began. The ideological weakness that blinded Germany's strategic decisions. Germany's leaders pushed policies based on belief rather than logic. This ideological obsession pushed Germany into directions that made no military sense. It caused Germany to underestimate enemies based on race and to waste precious resources on objectives that offered no strategic advantage. Instead of focusing on winning the war, Germany focused on fulfilling ideological fantasies that would ultimately destroy its chances of victory. Ideology blurred the vision of its leadership, and a nation fighting blind cannot hope to win a global conflict. The leadership weakness that ensured disaster even before the first battles. Germany's leadership system was designed around one man whose decisions could not be challenged. This turned every mistake into a national catastrophe. A healthy military relies on debate, disagreement, correction, and cooperation. Germany had none of these. Instead, it had a structure where truth was hidden, mistakes were denied, and fear controlled every officer from top to bottom. Such a system guarantees collapse because no leader, no matter how confident, can fight a world war without critical feedback. Germany lost not because of one decision, but because of a leadership system built to fail from the very beginning. The strategic weakness of fighting too many enemies too quickly. Germany believed it could defeat nations one at a time, but in reality it triggered alliances that brought multiple powerful enemies into the war. Germany was already surrounded by nations with larger economies, bigger populations, and global support. Germany had no natural resources, no strong allies, no oceans for protection, and no room for long wars. By choosing conflict, Germany ensured it would be overwhelmed. Germany lost before the war started because it positioned itself against a world that was simply too big to defeat.